Now this door was closed, so I open it up. I get right here and Sharon's laying in the floor, face down. Didn't know what to do and just kind of looking around, kind of stepping back like that. And about that time, I heard the really, really loud noise. And when I heard that noise, it really did scare me. And I, boom, boom!
This is Thomas Randolph, and he's reenacting his wife's murder.
And I don't know if I shot him once, I shot him twice. Come back down this way. Sharon? Sharon!
He's saying she was killed by a robber, but this is Thomas's sixth wife, and his fourth one to die. He's telling the cops a story that's actually a complete lie. In reality, he hired a hitman to kill his wife before killing the hitman too, all for his own personal gain. Police think this is an open and shut case, but Thomas believes he's a genius and can continue to cover up the terrifying secrets he's been hiding from them for the last 30 years. On May 8, 2008, Las Vegas police received a phone call.
911 emergency.
My wife's been shot and there's a guy in my house and I shot him.
Is he hurt too?
I look, she's dead.
Where is your wife in the house?
She's in the halls in the bedroom. She's been shot bad.
Is she awake?
No.
6 minutes later, police arrive at the scene to find Thomas's wife Sharon dead in the hallway and a man later identified as Michael Miller in the garage. Lying next to Michael's body is a gun, a bag of jewelry, several bullet casings, and a ski mask. Sharon had been shot once and Michael 5 times. According to Thomas, Sharon had walked in the house alone, where she came face to face with the robber who shot instantly. Thomas then followed in, saw Sharon's dead body, and eventually shot the robber dead. But immediately, the cops don't buy it. The forensics simply don't line up with what he's saying. There's bullet casings far away from where he said he shot, and he's not acting like someone who just lost his wife. But why would he have done this? Well, the cops would come to find out that Thomas has $300,000 in life insurance payments waiting for him since his wife died. He just needed to convince the cops that he didn't kill her. And he had the perfect explanation ready.
We went to a nice dinner for Mother's Day. We're getting ready to go to the movie, and she says, forget the movie, let's go home and and we're doing like 90 miles an hour. That 2 miles, we did it pretty quick to get home.
That's what Thomas told detectives, but the next 30 minutes went down much differently to how he explained it. At 8:26 p.m., the couple stopped by a gas station before heading home. 4 minutes later, they arrived home, and Thomas began to pull into his garage, but asked Sharon to get out of the car before he drove in. As he entered the garage, Sharon walked inside the house towards the master bedroom. At around 8:30 p.m., Michael Miller stepped out of the bathroom and shot Sharon in the head. Thomas then walked inside, and instead of freaking out or rushing to save Sharon, he walked over to Michael and shook his hand. Miller then took off his ski mask to relax, but walked towards the garage to leave. But as he turned his back, Thomas followed him into the garage and fired shot after shot into Michael's head and back, killing him instantly. Shortly after, Thomas then called the police and attempted to give CPR to Sharon until they arrived. The thing is, the phone call didn't come through until 8:45 p.m. The cops were able to speak to one of his neighbors, Mark, who heard the gunshots and was able to help them figure out exactly when it all happened. Mark told them that it must have been around 8:30, and sure enough, they were able to look through his phone records and find the exact moment was about 8:33 p.m. It took 12 minutes for Tom to call 911, but he told detectives on the scene that he didn't wait longer than 2 or 3 minutes. On top of that, in a short interview that night, he told officers that he hadn't heard a gunshot.
Did you ever hear any shots?
I didn't hear anything, but I'm really deaf.
But on the 911 call, he told dispatchers this.
Is he alone?
Yes, well, as far as I know, I didn't. I just heard shot.
He'd been caught in 2 lies now, and while they may seem inconsequential, they actually opened the doors to a giant web of deceit and fake stories and set the cops firmly on his tail. So much so that they decide to schedule another interview a few days later, asking Thomas to walk them through the murder scene and detailing exactly what went down. Quickly, you'll notice exactly how narcissistic and downright insane Thomas is, as it becomes clear that he's lying every step of the way, and he's loving every second of it.
Give us your name and then explain to us what your understanding is of what we're going to do here.
My name is Tom Randolph. My date of birth is 2255, and it's my understanding we're doing a walkthrough of the house, kind of a reenactment of what happened last Thursday.
It's your desire to come out here and do this for us, right, so that we can get an understanding of what was going on?
It's my desire, not my desire, but I'm cooperating with you.
Before they've even started the walkthrough, it's obvious that Tom is extremely high in this interview, and he even admitted it himself later on. Remember, this is just a couple days after his wife died, and it doesn't seem like he's going to take it seriously at all.
The driveway, about when I start to make the curve, about there we start opening the door up. So she gets out, closes the door. She goes on in, starts walking in. I give her a little bit of head start to get to the door. She's going in the house about right now.
Okay.
Well, I actually start shutting the door as I get in. I would have already shut the door. It would have been coming down as I start getting out. This is it, just coming on in the house. Now this door was closed, so I open it up. I get right here and Sharon's laying in the floor, face down. Her head's just barely in the bedroom, if that. I said, Sharon! Sharon!
Up until this point, everything is pretty much accurate and believable. But now, things will slowly start to differ. He realizes Sharon's been hurt, but instead of rushing to help her or see what's wrong, he says that he stops, props open the garage door, and considers going to find a neighbor. But there is something that manages to catch his attention.
And about right here, when I was like this, I was trying to kind of get a view. I thought I just seen like a shadow or something over this way. And I remembered that there's the 9mm right up here, because earlier I'd taken all my guns, put them in a suitcase, was gonna take them to Utah and switch the guns around. I reached right up here, got the gun, and as I got the gun, there's also an extra clip. There's a few up there, but I got the gun and the clip, and I'd already started to run, and then I just reached up just like that, grabbed it, stuck it in my pocket, came around just like that, and about that time, he's right up on me. Just right up on me, and we actually touched right about here. Coming out, I was actually gonna try to be slow, and look out, but it just happened too quickly. Came up, and he kind of banged into me, bit my mouth or something, trying to say something like, what the f***? But he was doing something, going for something. And as we got up in here, and he kind of rushed up on me a little bit, and that's when I just pushed him, boom, 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 and he started going out toward the shed.
It feels as though Tom is performing this to detectives rather than just showing them what happened. He's enjoying this far too much, to the point where he's actually just made a huge mistake. He just told the detectives that he shot Michael here, in the hallway, not in the garage where it actually happened. Of course, the detectives don't know that yet, but this will later become one of the biggest clues they'll use to try and convict him.
I don't know how many times I shot him, but I just kept right on going. Boom, boom, boom. Just laying there, and I look back because then I'm trying to make sure everything's cool, kind of stepping back like that, and about that time I heard the really, really loud noise, and what had happened is I guess he had hit the refrigerator, and when I heard that noise it really did scare me, and I, boom, boom! Except the door didn't come down.
So according to Tom, he put a total of between 7 and 8 shots into Michael, 6 in the hallway, and a couple more near the door to the garage.
And then started coming back down this way. He wasn't moving. Some noise. Sharon? Sharon! Sharon! And she's not.
What are you doing now?
I'm just kind of trying to see if anything else is going on. Like there's anybody around. And Sharon's laying right here.
It was at this point that Tom says he called 911. In his words, roughly 2 or 3 minutes after the shots went off. He says that the line was busy the first time he tried, but he was able to quickly get on the phone with a paramedic who helped him administer CPR. This was almost the strangest section of the interview. So far, Tom doesn't seem to have displayed any grief or urgency around seeing Sharon dead. And that only becomes more obvious now when he's given a chance to maybe save her life. Listen to the way he describes giving CPR to Sharon, and see if it sounds at all like what a grieving husband would say.
He was basically telling me it was going to be yucky. I don't remember the words he used, but he said that we needed to take care of Sharon or she was going to die. It wasn't going to be pleasant, is maybe what he said. And I said, that's okay, I can do it. Let's just do what we got to do.
Obviously, the paramedic didn't say any of this. No medical professional will say anything that might worry you or cause you anxiety before administering aid. So you might think it's odd that he made that up, but it's not even the weirdest part.
It seems like he told me to lay the phone down now and roll her over. Now this is the back part, and it was bad then, but it's really bad tonight, so it may not be exactly like that. But I laid the phone down something like that. I said, Sharon. I'm trying to get her to respond in some way. So I tried to roll her over several times, and I couldn't get her over. It's just too much weight for me. It was hurting me, and I remember grunting and trying to get her over. I just had to jerk her. It wasn't like a gentle, loving thing by any means. It was like, and about the third time it jerked enough that she got up kind of straight up, and I could just kind of push her over. And I know the whole time I'm probably crying and yelling, Sharon, talk to me, something like that. And she came over, and it was the grossest thing I had ever seen in my life.
The last things on your mind when you're trying to save your dying wife should be how gross it looks or how tired you're getting. You would be putting every ounce of your energy into saving her life. But all that Thomas can apparently do is allegedly muster a couple of shouts and cries for her. Retrospectively, it seems obvious that this is all an act, but the problem is the cops don't have any evidence yet and barely know anything about Tom himself. All they know is that he's the sole survivor and a very strange character, and he's only gonna get stranger.
Just like that, just kind of.
So he stepped into the doorway and squared off on you?
Kind of, yeah. More of a, back there.
So
Nah,
now he
maybe
squared
even,
off on you?
maybe
What was
about
he
right
doing?
there. He was looking at first. I thought he was looking at something, but I guess he was just looking through me.
Because you
But
guys are just inches away from each other,
just
really.
a few inches away, and he's going. I had just come down with the gun, and you could see my gun. I had the gun.
Okay.
And he's
reaching.
doing for something. I don't know what he's doing. He's either getting a gun or gonna me, because he
But
was doing with something with his pants.
He's facing this way, and he's got both hands, or just one?
I think just one, but I don't know for sure. I wasn't really paying attention to what he was grabbing at. I was paying attention to killing him.
Once the detectives had finished talking with Thomas, they were left with far more questions than answers. Tom had done everything he could to spin a story where he was the hero and he was hell-bent on taking out the intruder and protecting his wife and home. But something just felt off. This is when the investigators decided to do some more research into Tom himself, and they found that he's had more than his fair share of brushes with the law, in almost exactly the same circumstances. These are Thomas Randolph's 6 wives, all of which were supplemented by countless girlfriends and mistresses over the years. These are the wives who survived. Only 2 of them managed to make it out alive. But the strangest thing is that every single one of his wives were absolutely enchanted by Thomas when they met.
He was a very charming and witty person and very intelligent, and I fell for that at first.
Buying really nice gifts and things of that factor. It was kind of flattering at first, I have to admit.
But somewhat predictably, it wouldn't take long for these women to realize that there was something strange about Tom. He wasn't committed at all. In fact, he believed that he was such an attractive man and skilled lover that he could do whatever he wanted, and his wives just had to deal with it.
Fidelity has never been my strong suit. I'm addicted to love. I'm a true romantic. I've always cheated on my wives, but they loved me. I wasn't interested in her romantically, sexually, personally, nothing. I was having sex with one of Dana's friends. I was having sex with one of the neighbors. I was having sex with a stripper that I know.
I remember Becky calling me, and I counseled her probably over a couple of months. You've got to find a way to get out of here. Don't let him know what your plans are, but you got to get out.
Becky was Thomas's second wife, and it was her that helped detectives realize just how dangerous he really was. It turns out she had every right to be scared of Thomas, as on the 7th of November 1986, she ended up dead after taking a bullet to the head. Detectives initially ruled this as a self-inflicted shot. Thomas had told detectives that she'd been extremely depressed, and that argument led to her suicide. suicide. But as cops interviewed her friends and family, they were told a very different story. And that in reality, there was only one person that ever made her feel sad. And that was Thomas himself.
I absolutely do not think she committed suicide. I don't recall her ever being depressed enough to be at all.
We all knew that Tom had done it. And no matter what we did, nobody would believe us. No matter what we said, nobody would believe us.
The evidence lines up with this too. The blood spatters weren't consistent with Thomas's story, her body hadn't fallen in a position that made sense, and many other things were off. But since this wasn't initially treated as a homicide, the scene wasn't protected properly, and much of the evidence disappeared and was covered up by Thomas completely legally under the guise of just cleaning up his basement. But it was Becky's aunt that was able to shed the most light on Becky and Thomas's relationship, and she painted the picture of a manipulative, abusive, and narcissistic man better than anybody else.
He was just an arrogant, smartass. He had a room down in the basement, and he always kept it locked, and he'd have other girls down there and make her go down and watch him have sex. He's really a sick son.
But on top of all of this, she revealed to police one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that had actually been used almost 30 years later when trying to solve Sharon's murder. She had loaned Thomas $2,000 that she believed he was going to use to get out of debt. But it turns out that money was used to take out life insurance premiums on Becky. When Becky died a short time later, Thomas was awarded $530,000. The police now even had a motive. But when the case made it to court, it was ruled that there simply wasn't enough evidence to convict Tom. This was the pattern that repeated itself until the day Sharon died, 22 years later, with Thomas collecting over $1 million in life insurance payouts on premiums that barely any of the women even knew about. And he didn't try to keep his new wealth a secret either. He was well known to use drugs, date strippers, and buy girls gifts whenever he could, and he was proud of it all too. But to make things even more suspicious, he even tried to claim that he never took out these life insurance policies at all.
There's nothing secret about this. I never took out life insurance on any wife because you can't just go insure anybody. They have to do a medical history. They have to pee in a cup and they take blood. And this is what just irks me about all of this. Well, he secretly took out insurance. That is a total lie.
So at this point, the cops are aware of exactly what's happened to all of Thomas's 6 wives. 4 have turned up dead, and on all of them, he's taken out suspicious life insurance. They have dozens of witnesses, all with nothing good to say about him, and they just don't believe any of his stories. To make matters worse, his walkthrough of Sharon's murder site was frankly laughable, so they're led to believe only one thing. Thomas is a murderer, and he killed Sharon. That led the cops to June 3rd, 2008, when he was brought in for interrogation. This, after all they'd been through, is where they were able to see the full scale of Thomas's insanity.
How would you sum yourself up?
I'm a cocky always have been. But I'm also really nice, I'm generous. I'm a smart I should have been on the dream team, always wanted to be a lawyer.
Really?
Yeah. No, I worked for the lawyers for a long time, just as an investigator, as paralegal, ran a lot of their law offices.
The detectives are aiming to learn more about Thomas's relationship with both Sharon and Michael, but they're going to find it more difficult than expected. This interrogation is full of Thomas going off on strange tangents, saying things for shock value, and to gauge how detectives would react to certain things. But luckily, they're able to stay composed and stick to the plan. But that doesn't mean that Thomas isn't going to try and throw them off track.
Is there anything
I can't tell you
at all that happened that day that made him believe that he needed to get into your house that night?
I did. I took 20 grand out of the bank. I had 20 grand transferred. I was in Utah.
So he's been with you then when you've had large amounts of cash.
I've always got large amounts of cash, but yeah.
Why don't you think he shot you?
He was trying to shoot me. I've told you this over and over. He was trying to shoot me. I like you. You I don't like, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know why, I just don't like you.
Thomas would actually hold this opinion for years to come.
Dino Kelly is the most disgusting excuse for a man, little less a detective.
It seemed as though he was almost insulted that someone of a lower intellect than him was investigating him. He fully believed that he was a smarter, better person than that detective. Thomas is a complete narcissist, but he's also extremely strange in another way.
I've talked to you more than anybody I've talked to in Las Vegas since I've been here, rather than Sharon, Colleen, and the grandkids. So you're like my best friend, dude.
Well, shouldn't have secrets.
Shouldn't have secrets?
That's right.
What do you mean? Everybody's got secrets. Unless you come and just tell me I'm under arrest, or you just really need to talk to me to clear something else up, I'm probably not coming back out here for at least 30, 40 days.
You think we should tell you you're under arrest?
No, because if you are, you f***ed up. You f***ed up. This one's an easy one for you. This one's an easy one for you because the forensics is there.
It has its issues.
Everything about the way Thomas talks is just a little bit creepy. He truly thinks he knows better than anyone else in the room, and that nobody is going to catch him. And as the interview ends, he decides to end it all off with one of the strangest and eeriest lines he could have possibly said.
It's not that I don't trust you, but I think I'll take my bag with me. Is your wife good looking?
What do you think?
To kill for.
Outside of discovering just how weird of an individual Thomas is, the cops were able to extract a little more information in this interview. They found out that Michael had done some handyman work for Thomas in the past, and that they'd apparently become somewhat good friends over the past few months. But things weren't lining up, and they needed to get a second account. So detectives tracked down Michael's family and decided to interview one of his brothers to see what he knew about Thomas. It's from this point onwards that all the puzzle pieces would start to fall into place one by one.
How do you meet Tom, do you know?
Say he was on the street corner, and he pulled up to him and asked, did he want to do some work?
Was he getting paid then for what he was doing?
He said he was getting $600 a week.
Did he say how often he had contact with this man, Tom?
It was all the time.
At the time, Michael was down on his luck and essentially homeless. He wasn't making much money, so when Thomas approached him out of nowhere and offered him work, he jumped on the opportunity and developed a connection to Thomas. He felt almost indebted, something Thomas would soon begin to exploit.
Did you ever know your brother to have a gun?
No. My brother wouldn't kill nobody.
The thing is, the evidence showed that Michael almost certainly had killed Sharon. He had his own firearm, he was in the house before Sharon and Thomas were, and all the forensics lined up to show that he was almost certainly the one to fire the shot. The question was why, and thankfully, Michael's best friend might have the answers the detectives need.
He always talked about the man he met at the store. He told me he wanted me to kill his wife. I said, for what? He said, I don't know. He told me he wanted me to kill his wife.
Their suspicions had been confirmed, and if it wasn't already clear enough for them, multiple members of Michael's family all said that he'd called them saying he was about to come into some money. His brother even claimed that he'd received that phone call the night before he was killed. The detectives were now certain that Thomas Randolph was guilty. They're sure that he manipulated Michael and hired him to kill Sharon. The problem was proving it. Everything they'd gathered so far was hearsay, circumstantial evidence, and Thomas knew it. He believed that he committed the perfect crime, that there was no forensic evidence to back their case up. But he was dead wrong.
Hello? Can I talk to you real quick? Put your hands on your head right now. Put your hands on your head.
Taser, let me see. Taser,
tape. You're on the ground. On the ground.
Yes, my God.
You're under arrest. I understand it. Walk, all right? Walk it slow.
In order for detectives to have made this arrest, there were 2 question marks that they had to solve. But doing so would allow them to put Thomas away for life. Detectives had spent hours combing over the scene of the crime, Sharon's body, Michael's body, and everything surrounding them. To them, it was clear what had happened to Sharon. But as they looked closely and reviewed what Thomas said happened, they slowly spotted some inconsistencies, including one that would be the difference between him walking free and dying in a cell. Thomas had told detectives that he fired around 7 bullets in the hallway to the garage, starting from his room and pushing him towards the door. But the forensics said otherwise. In fact, there wasn't a single strike mark or blood spatter in the hallway, and only 1 bullet casing lay right next to the door to the garage.
Did you observe any blood in this area?
No, there was none.
Would you expect to see a bullet impact somewhere in that hallway?
Certainly.
Did you see any impacts in that
No.
hallway? Why was that significant for your investigation?
Because we didn't find in the hallway ballistic evidence that supported the description that Mr. Randolph had given for the shooting.
But past that doorway into the garage was a different story. That was where Michael's body lay, surrounded with multiple bullet casings and blood stains. 1 casing had even made it to the far wall of the garage, on the other side of the cars. It was physically impossible for any of the shots that Thomas described to have resulted in this layout of evidence. He had to have lied to detectives about this. But this wasn't even the most damning piece of evidence the cops found. A skilled defense could and would argue that Thomas had simply misremembered. After all, it was a tense situation, and mistakes are made. But there was one single item that put Thomas dead to rights, and proved without a shadow of a doubt that his entire story was false. Thomas claimed that the intruder was wearing a ski mask when he broke into the house, obscuring his face. He said that he couldn't see who the intruder was, and that he was still wearing it when the shots were fired. So why was the ski mask still fully intact without a drop of blood anywhere on it?
Did you notice anything about its condition?
Yes, the crime scene analyst with gloves examined it. We did not find any defects in it, like bullet holes or blood on the ski mask.
Was that significant in relation to what you had learned from Mr. Randolph?
Yes, it was.
Why?
Because Mr. Randolph described colliding with Mr. Miller in the doorway, and he was wearing the ski mask, and that he started shooting at him continuously until he went to the floor in the garage.
In reality, Michael had removed the ski mask to talk with Thomas after the hit was complete, before walking to the garage to leave. Using these 2 small inconsistencies, that's what detectives were able to figure out. Detectives went back and forth with the defense for weeks trying to convince a jury of this story, bringing in countless witnesses including Michael's family and one of Thomas's mistresses. The prosecution wasn't able to use any evidence from previous cases, such as Becky's death, and as such couldn't paint the picture that they really wanted of Thomas. That's what made the wait for a verdict so much more nerve-wracking, not just for detectives, but the friends and family of everyone that Thomas had harmed.
Mr. Dyer, has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, ma'am. The clerk will now read the verdicts.
District Court, Clark County, Nevada. State of Nevada plaintiff versus Thomas William Randolph defendant. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Thomas William Randolph, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Count 2, murder with use of a deadly weapon, Sharon Randolph. Guilty of first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are these your verdicts as read? So say you one, so say you all?
Yes. Thomas was convicted not just of the murder of Sharon, but of Michael too, stating that they were his orders, so he should pay the price, and was sentenced to 60 years to life in prison. To this day, Thomas Randolph maintains his innocence, but his health is rapidly deteriorating, and it's likely he'll be waiting out the rest of his days behind bars.